Hey everyone, I'm Alex, 34 years old, and I've been with my fiancée Megan, who's 30, for 7 years. We've been engaged for 5 of those years, and now, finally, our wedding is only 9 weeks away. It's been a long time coming, and for the most part, everything feels great. At least I think it does. Megan has been super involved in the wedding prep lately. She's picked out her dress, helped me pick my suit, and is constantly talking about how excited she is for our big day. I can't lie. It's nice to see her so engaged after all this time. I've always known she's the type who loves to plan and organize, so seeing her dive into the details like choosing centerpieces and cake flavors makes me feel like she's really invested in this. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved because, for a while, I felt like maybe the wedding wasn't a priority for her. 5 years of being engaged is a long time after all. To be fair, we didn't delay the wedding because of any big issues between us. Life just happened. I got a promotion at work, which meant long hours for a while, and Megan wanted to finish her degree, so the timing never felt right. But now it does. Everything feels like it's falling into place, or at least it should. Still, there's this nagging feeling I can't shake. Like something's off, though I can't quite put my finger on it. Megan has been extra affectionate lately, which is great, but it's also a little unusual. Don't get me wrong, I love that she's more touchy and sweet, but it feels almost performative, like she's trying too hard to reassure me about something. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe she's just excited, and I'm being a paranoid idiot. We've been together long enough that I should trust her completely, right? But then there are these little things. Like last week, she was texting someone late at night. When I asked her about it, she said it was one of her bridesmaids, Jessica, talking about plans for the bachelorette party. Makes sense, right? But when I glanced at her screen, it didn't look like Jessica's name. I didn't push her on it because I didn't want to seem controlling or suspicious. Megan's never given me a reason not to trust her. She's always been upfront about everything, or at least I thought she had been. Then there's the issue of her phone. She's been a little more protective of it than usual. Not blatantly hiding it, but it's subtle. Flipping the screen down when she puts it on the table, taking it with her to the bathroom, stuff like that. Again, maybe it's nothing. Maybe she's planning a surprise for the wedding, and I'm just reading too much into it. But when I mentioned how excited I was to see what she was planning, she got weirdly defensive and changed the subject. It was a small thing, but it stuck with me. I also noticed she's been staying late at work more often. She's a nurse, so her schedule can be unpredictable, and I know things have been crazy at her hospital lately. She told me she's picking up extra shifts to save for the wedding, which is sweet of her, but she's never done that before. She's always been the type to value her downtime and say no to overtime unless absolutely necessary. I don't know. Maybe it's just wedding stress getting to both of us. Despite all of this, I keep telling myself not to let these thoughts fester. Megan has always been honest and dependable, and there's no real reason for me to doubt her now. Still, I can't help but feel like there's something she's not telling me. Maybe I'm just nervous about the wedding and projecting that onto her. Or maybe there's more to this than I realize. A couple of nights ago, Megan hit me with something completely out of the blue. We were sitting on the couch, going over some wedding plans, nothing serious, just finalizing the guest list, when she casually mentioned she was going on a 2-week trip to Europe with some friends from her university. I honestly thought she was joking at first. We're 9 weeks away from our wedding, and she's never mentioned any plans like this before. I asked her to repeat herself, thinking maybe I misheard her, but nope, she was dead serious. She acted like this was a completely normal thing to drop on me, like it wasn't weird at all to plan an international trip in the middle of wedding preparations. The friends she's going with are a group I've never been fond of. Some people she used to hang out with in college who always struck me as self-absorbed and, frankly, kind of shady. I've tried to keep my opinions to myself over the years because I didn't want to come across as controlling, but now this felt like a slap in the face. Why hadn't she even discussed this with me before booking it? I asked her why she'd want to go on a trip now, of all times. She said something about needing to relax before the stress of the wedding really hit her and how it would be good for her mental health. Okay, fair enough. I get that weddings can be stressful, but 2 weeks? In Europe? With those friends? It just didn't add up. Then she hit me with the real bombshell. She thought we should take a break in our relationship while she was away. At that point, I couldn't even pretend to play it cool. I asked her what she meant by a break. We're literally weeks away from getting married, and she's talking about taking a step back? She said she just needed some space to clear her head and make sure we were both on the same page before the wedding. I was floored. This was coming out of nowhere, at least it felt like it to me. I asked if I'd done something wrong or if she was having second thoughts about the wedding. She insisted it wasn't about me, that she loved me and still wanted to get married, but that she needed some time to herself. She even tried to spin it as something that would be good for us in the long run, like a chance to make sure we were both ready for this big step. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to push too hard and make her feel like I was trying to control her, but I couldn't just sit there and pretend like this wasn't completely bizarre. I told her I supported her if she really felt like this was something she needed, but inside, I was a mess. None of it made sense. After that conversation, she started acting even stranger. She was distant and distracted, barely engaging in the wedding planning or even our usual conversations. I tried to bring up the trip a couple of times, just to get some more details about where she was going and what she'd be doing, but she always dodged my questions or gave me vague answers. Oh, we're just hitting a few spots. Paris, maybe Amsterdam. Stuff like that. She didn't even seem excited about it, which made the whole thing feel even weirder. Part of me wanted to call her out and demand to know what was really going on. But another part of me was scared of what I might hear. What if she really was having doubts about the wedding? What if this break was her way of testing the waters for something else? I hate that my mind is going there, but I can't help it. Something just feels off, and I don't know what to do. I've been trying to convince myself that this is just a weird phase or a case of pre-wedding jitters, but deep down, I feel like there's more to it. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if my gut is telling me something I don't want to admit. All I know is that I've never felt this uncertain about Megan before, and it's killing me. The trip started, and Megan's behavior immediately set off more alarms. Before she left, I told her I'd miss her and hoped we could stay in touch while she was gone. She promised she'd text me whenever she had time, but once she got to Europe, her messages became short and distant. Having fun, talk later, was pretty much the vibe of every text. It wasn't like her. Megan's always been the type to share every little detail, especially when she's traveling. She loves telling me about the places she's visiting, the food she's trying, even random people she meets. This time, though, barely anything. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she was just busy sightseeing or trying to stay present with her friends. But then her friends started posting on social media, and that's when things took a turn. I don't follow most of her university friends, but one of them, Emily, has a public Instagram, and she was posting stories nonstop. That's how I found out they were in Barcelona. Emily posted pictures of them at a rooftop bar, by the beach, and at a club. It all looked pretty normal until I saw one photo that made my stomach drop. Megan was in the middle of a packed dance floor, arms around some guy I didn't recognize. They were laughing, and their bodies were way closer than I was comfortable with. I kept staring at the photo, trying to convince myself it wasn't as bad as it looked. Maybe he was just part of the group, and it was an innocent moment. But the longer I looked, the harder it was to believe that. I texted Megan right after I saw it. I tried to keep it casual, asking how the trip was going and if she'd made any new friends. She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, all she said was, "It's great. I'll tell you all about it when I'm back." That wasn't good enough for me. I brought up the photo asking who the guy was. Her reply came quickly this time. "Oh, that's just a friend we met here. Nothing to worry about. Just a friend didn't sit right with me." I asked for more details, how they met, if he was traveling with her group, but she got defensive. She said I was being paranoid and that I should trust her. Trust her? She's dancing with some random guy in a club while we're supposed to be 9 weeks from getting married, and I'm just supposed to shrug it off? The rest of the trip was more of the same. Megan's text stayed short and cold, and every time I asked about what she was up to, she'd brush me off with vague answers. Meanwhile, Emily kept posting, and the guy, who I started referring to as Club Guy in my head, kept showing up in the background. They were on the beach together, sitting at the same table during dinner, even posing for group photos. Megan never mentioned him once in any of our conversations. By the time she was supposed to come home, I was a complete wreck. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation, but the more I thought about it, the harder it was to see one. Why wouldn't she just be upfront with me? Why did she act like I was overreacting every time I asked a simple question? I felt like I didn't even know who she was anymore. When Megan finally got back, I was determined to get some answers. But instead of feeling relieved to see her, I was overwhelmed by doubt. The trip was supposed to be a chance for her to clear her head, but all it did was make me question everything about our relationship. A month after Megan left for Europe, everything fell apart in a way I never thought possible. At first, I tried to convince myself that things would get better once she was home. I figured the trip was just a weird blip, some kind of mid-engagement freakout that we'd laugh about one day. But then she stopped responding to my texts entirely. At first, I thought maybe she was just busy settling back into her routine after the trip. I sent her a few messages, nothing too heavy, just asking how she was doing and when we could catch up. No response. I tried calling straight to voicemail. When I checked her social media, I realized she had blocked me. Not just on one platform, but everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, even WhatsApp. It was like she had vanished into thin air. I was in total shock. This was Megan, the woman I'd been with for 7 years, the woman I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks. How does someone just disappear like that? I tried calling her friends, but they either didn't answer or claimed they didn't know what was going on. Even her family was cagey. Her mom told me Megan needed some time to figure things out, and that I should give her space. We were supposed to be planning the rest of our lives together, and now I was being told to just wait. I didn't know how to explain this to anyone. My family kept asking about the wedding, what colors we'd chosen, what the schedule looked like, and I had to keep dodging their questions. At work, my coworkers were always congratulating me, asking if I was ready for the big day. I didn't know what to say. Oh yeah, my fiancé blocked me on everything, but fingers crossed she'll show up for the wedding. It was humiliating. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I had to face the truth. The wedding wasn't going to happen. Megan had made that painfully clear, even if she didn't have the guts to say it to my face. Canceling the wedding was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Not just emotionally, but logistically. We'd already paid deposits for the venue, the caterer, the florist, and so much more. I tried to recoup what I could, but most of it was non-refundable. By the time I was done, I'd lost around $25,000. Just like that, gone. Telling my family was the next nightmare. They were crushed. My mom cried when I told her Megan had disappeared, and my dad was furious. He couldn't understand how someone could be so cowardly, and honestly, neither could I. I had to explain to everyone, family, friends, coworkers, that the wedding was off. The pity looks, the awkward silences, the what happened? Questions I couldn't answer. It was like salt in the wound. For weeks, I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out what I'd missed. Were there signs all along? Did I ignore red flags because I wanted so badly to believe in us? The worst part was not having closure. Megan didn't give me a reason, an explanation, or even a goodbye. She just walked away, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I'd invested 7 years of my life in this relationship, and now it felt like I didn't even know the person I'd been planning to marry. I still don't know what to make of it. Did she meet someone else? Was she unhappy all this time and just pretending? The questions keep piling up, and I'm left here with no answers, just a giant hole where my future used to be. A few weeks after canceling the wedding, when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I got hit with the truth. Megan's friend Jessica called me out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to her in a while, but she was one of the bridesmaids, so I figured maybe she was checking in. What I wasn't prepared for was the bombshell she dropped. Jessica started by apologizing, which immediately put me on edge. She said she felt guilty for keeping this from me and thought I deserved to know the truth. Then she told me that Megan had been in a relationship with someone else before she went to Europe, before she even brought up the trip. My mind went blank. At first, I didn't even understand what she was saying. What do you mean, a relationship? Like, she was cheating on me? Jessica hesitated but eventually confirmed it. According to her, Megan had been seeing the same guy, the club guy from the photos, for several months. She didn't know all the details, but apparently, Megan had met him through mutual friends and things escalated quickly. Jessica claimed she tried to talk Megan out of it, reminding her she was engaged, but Megan brushed her off, saying she needed to explore her feelings before settling down. That was bad enough, but then Jessica told me something that completely shattered me. The relationship hadn't started recently. Megan had been involved with this guy before we got engaged. Couldn't believe it. I kept asking Jessica if she was sure, if there was any chance she was mistaken, but she insisted it was true. Megan had been cheating on me for years. I don't know what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the fact that she'd let me propose, let me plan a wedding, while carrying on this double life. Every memory we built together felt like a lie. All those moments I thought we were happy. Were they just her pretending? Did she ever really love me? Or was I just her fallback while she lived another life behind my back? Jessica said she thought Megan's trip to Europe was her way of testing the waters with this guy, to see if they had a future together. That explained why she wanted a break, and why she acted so distant during the trip. It wasn't about needing space or clearing her head. It was about choosing him over me. I was devastated. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. My whole life had been built around Megan and the future we were supposed to have together. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but it turned out I didn't know her at all. The person I loved, the person I trusted more than anyone, had been lying to me for years. What made it worse was that I still couldn't get in touch with her. I wanted answers, closure, something, but she had completely shut me out. She didn't even have the decency to end things face to face. Instead, she left me to find out the truth from someone else. Like I wasn't even worth an explanation. I don't know how to move forward from this. Part of me wants to hate her, but another part of me still loves the person I thought she was. I'm stuck in this limbo of anger, heartbreak, and confusion, trying to figure out how to rebuild my life when the foundation I thought I had is gone. All I know is that I'll never let myself trust someone so blindly again. For months after Megan disappeared from my life, just when I'd started to feel like I might be moving on, she came back. Out of nowhere, I received a letter from her in the mail. At first, I didn't even want to open it. Seeing her handwriting on the envelope brought back every bit of anger and heartbreak I'd been trying to bury. But curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what she had to say. The letter was long, pages of neatly written words where she spilled everything. She admitted to the affair, saying it had started long before the trip to Europe and that she'd fallen for someone else while still trying to hold onto our relationship. She claimed she hadn't planned for it to happen, that it had just happened, which felt like the most cliché, gutless excuse I could imagine. She wrote about how guilty she'd felt for lying to me, but how she hadn't known how to tell me the truth. Instead, she let the situation spiral out of control until she ran away. She also confessed that the trip to Europe wasn't just about clearing her head. It was a trial run for her and this guy to see if they worked as a couple. Apparently, it didn't. According to her, things between them fell apart shortly after she returned. She said she realized too late what she had lost, that she'd made a huge mistake, and that she deeply regretted hurting me. The letter ended with a plea. She wanted to meet, to talk, to see if there was any chance we could start over. She said she still loved me and would do whatever it took to earn back my trust. She acknowledged how badly she'd hurt me but begged for a second chance to make things right. Reading her words made me feel every emotion at once. Anger, sadness, disbelief. It felt surreal to hear her suddenly admitting everything after months of silence. I'll admit, a part of me wanted to believe her. After all, 7 years isn't something you can just erase overnight. But the bigger part of me knew better. Megan had destroyed something fundamental between us: trust. Without that, there's no foundation for anything, let alone a relationship. I spent a few days thinking it over, but deep down, I already knew what I was going to do. Couldn't go back. The person Megan showed me she was, the person who lied to my face for years, who cheated on me, who walked away without even saying goodbye, isn't someone I can love or trust again. Maybe she's genuinely sorry. Maybe she does want to make amends. But for me, it's too late. I wrote her a short reply. I told her I appreciated her apology, but that there was no coming back from what she did. I wished her well and made it clear I didn't want to hear from her again. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I needed to protect myself from any further hurt. In the end, her letter didn't give me the closure I was hoping for, but it did give me clarity. Megan's choices broke us beyond repair, and while I'll always regret how things ended, I refuse to let her actions define the rest of my life. I'm moving forward now, one step at a time, and I'm determined to find peace, even if it's without her. After I sent Megan that letter telling her I couldn't give her another chance, I thought that would be the end of it. I figured she'd take the hint and move on. But I was wrong, very, very wrong. What followed was something I never could have expected from her. Megan didn't just apologize and disappear like I'd hoped. Instead, she started trying to force her way back into my life in ways that went from uncomfortable to downright obsessive. It started with texts and emails. She began messaging me from numbers I didn't recognize, begging me to talk to her. When I blocked one number, she'd find another. Her emails were constant, and they varied wildly in tone. Some were emotional, pleading for forgiveness and asking for a second chance. Others were angry, accusing me of giving up on us too quickly and painting herself as the victim. First, I ignored her. I thought if I didn't engage, she'd eventually stop. But then she started showing up. The first time it was at my house. I came home from work to find her waiting on my porch. She was holding a box of my favorite snacks and acting like nothing had happened, like we were still together and she could just waltz back into my life. I told her she needed to leave, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She stood there crying, saying she loved me and that she couldn't believe I was throwing everything away. Eventually, I had to threaten to call the police before she finally left. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, she showed up at my office. My coworkers knew about the canceled wedding, and they'd been supportive. But this was humiliating. She walked in like she belonged there, asking to talk to me, completely ignoring the fact that I was in the middle of a meeting. My boss had to ask her to leave, and I could see the looks of confusion and pity on everyone's faces. It was mortifying. From that point on, I started feeling like I couldn't escape her. She'd leave notes in my mailbox or flowers on my doorstep. Once, she even left a scrapbook she'd made of our best moments as a couple, with handwritten captions about how much she missed me. It wasn't romantic, it was terrifying. No matter how many times I blocked her, ignored her, or told her to stay away, she kept finding new ways to get to me. I started to feel trapped. Every time my phone buzzed, I wondered if it was her. Every time I heard a knock at the door or saw someone outside my house, I braced myself, expecting to see her. It wasn't just annoying, it was affecting my mental health. I couldn't sleep, couldn't concentrate at work, couldn't relax in my own home. I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for her next move. The worst part was the fear. I didn't know what she was capable of anymore. Megan had already proven she could lie to me for years, that she could manipulate and betray me without hesitation. Now, she was crossing boundaries I never thought she would. I started to wonder if I should involve the police, but part of me hesitated. I didn't want to make things worse or escalate the situation unnecessarily. But how much was I supposed to take? At this point, I'm at a loss. I don't know how someone who was once such an important part of my life could turn into this person I barely recognize. Megan's behavior has gone from desperate to obsessive, and it feels like she won't stop until she gets what she wants, or until I'm forced to take drastic action to protect myself. After months of dealing with Megan's relentless attempts to push her way back into my life, I finally realized I couldn't handle this on my own. It wasn't just about being uncomfortable or annoyed anymore. It was about my safety and peace of mind. I couldn't keep living like I was under siege, constantly waiting for her next call, text, or unannounced visit. That's when I decided to contact a lawyer. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me still felt guilty, like I was overreacting or being too harsh. But the logical part of me knew this wasn't normal behavior. Megan wasn't respecting my boundaries, and no matter how many chances I gave her to back off on her own, she just wouldn't stop. After consulting with my lawyer and explaining everything, from the blocked numbers and emails to her showing up at my house and office, we decided the best course of action was to file for a restraining order. The process was emotionally draining. Reliving everything in detail for the legal paperwork made me feel vulnerable and exposed, but at the same time it was empowering. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. When the order was finally granted, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Megan was prohibited from contacting me in any way or coming near my home or workplace. Knowing I had that layer of protection was a relief I didn't even realize I needed. Enforcing the order wasn't immediate. Megan tried to push back at first, sending a few more emails and claiming I was being cruel and overdramatic. I documented everything and passed it along to my lawyer, and eventually, she seemed to get the message. The silence that followed was surreal. After months of chaos, my life finally felt like it was mine again. With Megan out of the picture, I started focusing on myself for the first time in what felt like forever. I leaned on my friends and family, who had been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. I reconnected with people I hadn't seen much during my relationship with Megan, and it reminded me how much I'd isolated myself over the years, prioritizing her above everyone else. I also threw myself into my hobbies, things I'd put on the back burner for years. I started playing guitar again, something I hadn't done seriously since college. I joined a local hiking group, which got me outdoors and introduced me to new people. I even took a painting class, just for the hell of it. These little things helped me rediscover who I was outside of the relationship and reminded me that my life didn't have to revolve around someone else. Looking back now, I see things much more clearly. Megan's actions were a reflection of her issues, not mine. I can't control what she did or why she did it, but I can control how I respond and how I move forward. I've learned to value myself more and to recognize that I deserve better. Better communication, better respect, and better love than what Megan offered me. That chapter of my life is closed now. It took time, tears, and a lot of hard lessons, but I finally let go of the anger and heartbreak. I'm at peace with the fact that some people are meant to be lessons, not life partners. And for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what's next.